Hello, this is Dean Johnson again on the 1st of August. I was going through my little prompts here I have, and I thought maybe you would just add this to you. You might like it, I don't know. Well, working the flour sacks on the ship and the rail cars, especially the rail cars I'll tell you about. We used to do 1,900 sacks, or 1,800 sacks to 1,900 sacks. And we'd unload them from the rail cars onto pallets, and they'd be taken away into the shed. Usually at overseas terminals. And so we would start early in the morning, and we'd work like a dog to finish before noon. And that is no breaks or anything, just go, go, go all the time. The quickest I ever finished my quota was 10 o'clock in the morning, one Saturday. We worked like dogs. And I went home and I fell asleep on the couch. And it was late at night when I woke up off the couch. So it didn't do me any good to finish early because I just slept the rest of the day. I was so worked out, you know. And another thing I'll tell you about is sulfur. They used to load sulfur, pour sulfur in a hatch, and they'd be like a cone. And then they would have it rigged up, a big, thick 4x8 sheet of plywood with handles on it, cut out of it, and rigged it up with a crane, with the gear, the steam winches, and pulley blocks inside the hatch. And we would stand behind that big sheet of plywood, and it was probably over an inch thick. And then hatch time would give a signal, and the steam winches would pull, and we would keep it straight, and we would try and direct it and level off this sulfur. So we had to level it all off so they could pile lumber on top of it, hand stove lumber. And that was an awful job. Pushing that into the wings with that and resetting the gear at different times. And that was a real tough job, but we did it. And you can imagine the stink and the sulfur, what it was like. And another thing was working pulp, I tell you. From hand trucks to planting loads. When we first started loading pulp back in 60s, it was all hand truck. You had 400-pound bales, and you went there with a hand truck, and you wheeled them over, and you dropped them over. Then you had a bar about an inch by about 3 feet, an inch wide, and a half-inch thick, 2 inches wide, half-inch thick, 3 feet long or more. And you'd put them under the wire that wrapped the pulp, and you'd slide the pulp into place that way, nice and tight. And I went from there to planting loads. And they got heads, and first of all, we'd plant small loads with the gear. There'd be a small bridle carrying a few bundles. And then finally the last thing I remember was 16 bundles of pulp at once they were planting on deck. So it was an easy job. You couldn't really do anything. Just unhook them. And then it got so that the winch driver, the crane operator, could unhook them himself. So you just had to go down there, be down the hatch, make sure it was nice and tight, and give him a signal when to unhook them, and that. So that's how that went. And with paper, with hand trucks, we used to have big loads, 900-pound rolls of paper, and we'd have a big hand truck. And we'd wheel them into where they wanted to be in the hatch. This is when we started in 61. And then you'd flop them up. And the last little bit you'd get behind them and trying to wiggle them in to get every little bit of space you could. And they went from that to planting them, just like pulp. And they would have a bridle and with suction cups that would go down the middle of the paper rolls and pick them up that way and take them into the hatch and set them up right and nice, and then let them go. And go back out of the hatch, and we were there just to make sure everything was done right. And working paper and lumber with lift trucks down that hatch. I can tell you one time, I just mentioned a job. We used to have lift trucks down there moving the paper before they planted the paper. This is one of the steps between from hand truck to lift truck to planting the paper. But we had the lift truck this one time. And Jack, he was my winch driver, train driver. And we were on a finish-up job. We started at 5 and we should have been finished by 6:15 at the latest. Well, we went down there and they couldn't start the forklift. They tried and they tried and they tried. They couldn't start it. So anyways, they had to take it out, and it was in the afternoon. Had to get a mechanic from Vancouver to come over and fix this lift truck. So we sat around and waited. It took over an hour for the mechanic to come from Vancouver. And then the mechanic went down there and he jump-started it, and then, it had run out of gas. So we couldn't, we put it down, if I remember right now, they got it going a little bit. And it ran out of gas, and we had to leave it. We couldn't put the gas in the lift truck inside the hatch. It had to be outside on the dock. So that took a little bit more time. So by that time, coffee time come, and we tried to get this lift truck down the hatch. And as we're going down, the lift truck tried to turn around. It spun around on the cable, and nothing we could do. And there was a beam between decks, and the foreman said, "Well, go down on top of that beam, and I'll stop the spin, and then we can go down." So Jack went down, but he punctured the gas tank. The gas went all over the place. We had to take it back out and wait and get a new lift truck and everything else. So that was after 9, 10 o'clock. Then we had to call the business agent. We had to wait another hour or something for the smell to go away and the gas to evaporate out of the hatch before it goes down. And we had to have an air blower and blow the hatch out. So by that time, this happened. We get everything all set to go, and we go to get the last loads off the scow. Well, the tugger came by, and they knew we'd be finished by 7, and they just took the scow away down the river. So the head foreman, Lance Horton, he had to get the scow back, phone the tugs and get the scow back and put it beside the hatch. And so we finally went and we got the loads. And we were getting the last load off, and the scow line broke. And here the scow went down in front of the ship. And so we had to call tugs again. And by that time, it was quitting time, 1 o'clock. And what happened was, they got the scow back, and Lance Horton, he was livid, but I mean, what can you do? And we've got the scow back, and finally finished the job. It was after 1 o'clock in the morning. This early finish was after 1 o'clock in the morning. That's just one story about what happened down there. And these ships, they used to have deep tanks. Well, this is for ballast. They used for ballast for water and stuff, but they empty them out, and they'd send us guys down there. And the hatch was a very small hatchway into the deep tanks. As you can imagine, it was probably 6 by 6. That was the entrance of the hatch. And we'd be down these deep tanks, and they would bring loose lumber, and they'd have to sit it on the edge of the hatch and tip it up so it would slide down head first. And we would have to run out of the wave down there. And then the load would be on its edge, and we'd have to pick the lumber from the edge and stow it in the deep tanks there. Now, nobody liked that. That was a very dangerous job. And on these other hatches, on the main hatches, they had sweatboards about every every 2 feet up there was a sweatboard. That's what they called them. And when we had a, let's say, a 20 by 20 foot hatch, and you had 26 foot lumber coming down, you had to tilt it on a Coleman and slide it down. And us guys would have to run up and climb up these sweatboards so we wouldn't get hurt. Because lumber sometimes would be flying all over the place. And then we'd get down and we'd pick it up and store whatever was there, you know. And that was telling you just a little bit about the work down there. And the car ships, the first car ships, they just had nets with a bridle and a net to pick up the car. Well, I mean, it was pretty hard and a lot of cars got damaged. And, you know, the cars were put in there by Japanese and Koreans, and they were small people. And they were packed so tight that us longshoremen could barely get in between the cars to do anything. So a lot of cars got scratched and dented, and we couldn't help it to get them out. So then they finally went to these grabs. So we'd grab around the tires of the car. And they would come down and we'd stand there and we'd put them on the tires and and lock them up with a pin, and out they would go. Well, you're on 2-inch drivers and you're trying to do your best, but a lot of times you'd bump another car and stuff, so there was a bit of damage done there. So then they come up with a cage. And this cage is they would land it down and they had a flap that went down. And you would roll the car up this flap a little bit. The flap was maybe a foot. And into the cage. And as they picked it up, this flap would go up and hold the car there. And as it came over in the dock, they had a 4x4 block. And what happened is they'd land the rear end of the cage on the 4x4, so it had a slant. And the flap would go down and the car would roll out. And then somebody would stop it and get into it and drive it away to where it was supposed to be parked. Then after that, they had elevator ships coming in. And you went to the elevator. And you rode up the elevator to the top deck of the ship. And you drove it down a ramp. And there is a picture of that. Of us doing it, and a bunch of guys doing it. The hall has it, and I don't know exactly where it is, but it's because I got the picture and I gave it to him. And then after that, what happened was, a couple of guys drove down the elevator shaft, thought there was the elevator there, and it wasn't. They drove in, and there's nothing there, and they went down, and they got hurt, not too badly, but. That's what happened. So finally they had started to get the roll-on and roll-off ships. And they were the best. And we could really drive those cars. The first 4 miles of those cars, the first mile, was really well tested out by us young guys. Couldn't help it but peel rubber and go down the dock as fast as you could. Okay, that's about that. Now, when I was working in the steady gang with Big Len, Ted Phillips, Johnny Horton, and others, and the Slingman, I was on there. Hey, that's the first time I ever learned Dangerous Dan McGrew, the shooting of Dangerous Dan McGrew. Al Parson, which was the top winch driver on the beach at that time, taught me how to drive steam winch. Boy, that was an interesting one. I think I've already told you about that one. And Len working the other side. When I was his partner, I liked it. Len would just work like anything, and I would try to keep up, do my best, and we'd finish our load before the other side finished theirs. So I wanted to sit down. We'd have maybe a 5-minute break. But what Len would do after that, he'd go over to the other side, the other guys load, and help them unload theirs. So we didn't get any 5-minute break. We probably got a 2-minute break. And it used to really get me mad, but of course I couldn't say a word to Big Len. No, wouldn't say a word about it, but he used to really pick me. And when I quit McGaw's gang, and everybody quit McGaw's gang, that was when the companies used to keep us a long time. When we had a guaranteed 8-hour day, we always had the biggest hatches. And the guys who didn't work, the gangs who were slow, and, they got off at noon. And those guys who worked hard, they kept us to finish off the other hatches, go to the other hatches and finish them off. And the guys that got off at noon, they let go at noon, had the same money as we did because it was a guaranteed day. So when they did that, we just said, hey, we quit. We were called back after 1 o'clock and the other guys weren't. We went to the hall and all of us quit the gang. So they had to refill the gang with different people. And that was the end of McGaw's gang. And that. And I'll tell you one guy I didn't tell you about. It was Curly Smith. He was a real character on the dock. One of the main characters around. Now, the story about him was he came from Nova Scotia or Newfoundland, one of those places, one of those provinces. And he was a drinker. He never started drinking until he was 30. And then he became a wino, a junk. But he was a big man. And I don't know how it happened, but 5 of his fingers, you count, he on both hands, he probably only had 5 fingers, half of them, because half of them were cut off. I don't know how he lost them. But he would always have his wine. And he'd be in the hall half drunk and, And us kids, well, we thought he was a wino, a big old wino, a gray-haired guy. He was in his, I guess, when I saw him, early 60s, maybe 60. And he came in one time, he's sitting there drinking, and there was a big post, 2 big posts, 12 by 12s that were support beams in our old hall. And he'd be sitting there, and us kids would be sitting playing cards or talking. And we got the idea that, hey, let's hide his bottle of wine. So we hid his bottle of wine. And, Curly, where's my wine? None of us said a word. None of us. Curly picked the biggest guy and grabbed him and by the throat and put him up against this big 12 beam and says, where's my wine? And he had this big fist there going to hit him. Well, we found the wine for him. And no more again did we fool around with Curly Smith. Drunk as we want, we never, as he could be. But they call him Curly Smith. His hair was curly. Another nickname they called him on the beach was No Sock Smitty, because he never wore socks. I only saw him with an old woolen pair of pants and a t-shirt and a suit jacket and old shoes on. I never saw him in anything else but that. And if I had lived his life a week, I'd be dead. He treated his body worse than any other person I know of. On 10th Street, going up the hill, on a rainy night, about 9 o'clock at night, this has got to be in November, October, November, here he was passed out in the gutter, water running down his neck, in his shirt, and coming out his pant legs, and his back. And he paid none the worse of the wear. Get up and, after he woke up. And one story about him was on a deck load, cold, miserable November day or December day. And he's working there and it's sleet and it's snow. And the guys took a little bit of pity on him. And they went to Eaton's and bought a pair of socks because he didn't have any socks. And he took the socks, instead of putting them on his feet, he used them as gloves on his hand. Well, the next morning, as is at Overseas Dock, guys went there early in the morning, go back, and there was a body on the dock with about a half inch of snow on it, maybe an inch. And what the heck, who is that? Some guy went over there, and one guy gave it a little kick to see what, and woke up. Curly Smith got up, went around the corner, got his half gallon of wine that he had stayed there, drank a bunch of that, and got up and he worked all day in the ship. You know what I mean? I don't know how that guy made it, but you know something? He retired. He met a younger woman than him that treated him like treated him really great. He looked better when he retired, 5 years after he retired, than ever he looked when he was working. And he wasn't drinking. And she looked after him good. And he lived to a ripe old age. Old Curly Smith. And another thing, some photographer in Westminster thought he would be a good subject. So they took a portrait of him with a big smoke and a big cigar. And that portrait, they hung up in front of the dispatch window in the old hall. And underneath it, we called Strang's Torpedo. Well, Strang at that time was the president of the BC Maritime Employees Association. And so just as they wrote it under. But Strang's Torpedo. But he was, the picture was with 1,000 words about his life and the type of life he lived. It's a rough, tough life. Anyways. Okay, that's about what I can tell you. Hope to see you soon. Bye.